Today, I'm truly honored to welcome Suzanne Cook Greuter. Many of you will know her as one of the leading voices in the field of adult development, a quiet pioneer whose work has helped shape how we understand the unfolding of the self beyond conventional meaning making. What I personally admire about Suzanne is how she brings together deep academic rigor with a real sensitivity to the mystery of human growth. How she speaks not just about development, but from within it. This is a rare opportunity to explore the journey of becoming through the eyes of someone who has both studied and deeply lived it. That's it. Welcome, dear Susanne.
Happy to be here.
Yes. So before we dive deeper into our conversation, I would like you or invite you to add something to this description, which maybe hasn't been said that much in public yet.
I've obviously said enough that I'm getting to be really old and have all the kinds of things that make being an older person not as easy as being a younger one.
And what is that?
Well, all the aches and pains, needing a cane, needing glasses, needing a hearing aid, the whole stuff that comes with being old, not being able to travel. So much of my life I spent traveling really all over the world and teaching in Australia and in South Africa, everywhere, really, many places. And now I can't travel. And that's a new, really difficult challenge.
Well, you traveled through the orbit today, sort of, and that is
Sure.
hopefully a substitute.
I like to smell, I like to sit, I like to eat with people because that seems so fundamentally more real. This is beautiful too, I agree, but nothing can replace the personal, even the smells of people. Particularly in different countries, they actually smell.
I see.
In a real way for human beings. It really upsets me that we now have the full body deodorants so that everybody, like with AI, everybody gets homogenized and the beauty and the variety of being human gets leveled out.
Okay. Well, okay. But before we go deeper with these points, I would like you to give us a short introduction, a brief introduction to ego development, why it is so important and why it is so interesting to make researches about that. Would you like to share some thoughts on that, please?
Sure. I discovered it. I was brought up and got degrees in linguistics. Language as a Swiss person was always central to my understanding of the world. That different languages really see the world differently and frame it differently. And so when I came to the US in 76, and I went back to school, and I discovered this theory called Levinger's ego development theory in a class with all kinds of other theory. We looked at several adult development theory, but that one, because it focuses on language, really was like a marriage between my interests. And so I started, and as soon as I started, I became an analyst of her test. And as soon as I started, I got responses in those tests that could not be explained with her theory, and to me made totally good sense. They were late stage. They were more not spiritual, but capable of seeing that the ego isn't the only way of looking at the world. So I started collecting them from doing research with other people.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, sorry, continue.
no, ask.
You just said the ego isn't the only way to see the world, or to see the world through the ego is not the only way to see it. Maybe that's a hook which we can take to explain ego development. What does that mean?
It means that when you start out as a baby, you're completely symbiotically unified with your mother. You have no sense of a separate self. You have no sense of any objects. It's just you and mom as a unity. And the way I see it, at the very other end of development, I usually use an arc, not a spiral.
Mm-hmm.
Again, for linguistic reasons, but I'll say more if we want to later. But at the other end, there is the unity, but the conscious unity, not the unconscious one that the baby knows. But
So,
it's the same thing, connected to everything and everybody.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing, including the awareness of that unity.
Yes, before it is not there. And it's that's the growth of the self, is to become aware of it. And many people don't.
Mm-hmm.
Our data show that maybe 80% of people are what we call at the conventional stages, those that society supports, and at most 20% actually move beyond that and
Mm-hmm.
get closer to that view that it's not even a view, it's an experience that is different from everything that went before.
Mm-hmm. Where do we actually find those post-conventional minds more?
There's certain groups that attract them. So the integral world, I'm sure your
Sure.
listeners may be familiar with Ken Wilber's work.
Mm.
That whole that attracts people, post-conventional people, but they're relatively rare.
Mm-hmm.
I was so disappointed when I went back to school to get my PhD. I imagined at Harvard professors would be very well developed. I have to report there were some, but there were many who were just conventional, very good, and at the forefront
Mm-hmm.
of their areas of interest, but not post-conventional as human beings.
Mm-hmm. So let us describe the post-conventional minds. How do we actually recognize them? And how do we recognize them within ourselves?
When the questions become more important than knowing something,
Mm-hmm.
constant wondering about, how come I believe this? How come I see it this way and not another way? And why? What is it that makes another person's view, rather than just foreign or rejected, interesting? How come they look at the world through their eyes in this way? That's one of the fundamental things. And also not just using your mind to look at the world, but use your dreams, your heart, your feelings, your body. They all tell you very interesting things if you can know how to listen.
Mm-hmm.
And conventional culture, of course, doesn't basically favors the mind, cognition.
Yeah. I totally agree. And I see it with a lot of joy that, especially in the spiritual area and also in the therapeutic and coaching area, the importance of becoming aware of our bodies, our feelings, and maybe even finer senses is actually evolving. So it's spreading more and more
Yes.
throughout the past years. And that's probably a good step for many people to become more aware of themselves.
Yes. So, like in any situation, even on the internet and on Zoom, we can stop and say, take a deep breath and say, what do you notice when you're still for a minute? What's
Mm.
around you?
Mm.
Do you notice your feet? Do you notice your toes? Do you notice your nose? You know, just focusing on something else is often a good practice, yes. And it doesn't have to be post-conventional. It's just easier. At the
Mm.
post-conventional stages, it seems to become a natural way of being, whereas before one needs a bit of help and support and training, practice to experience those other modalities of being, not just thinking and, yeah.
So maybe to give the listeners an overview more, we could have a look at the model that you gave me before, which is more an arc than a spiral, because the spiral also, I guess that's why you chose it also, it sort of invites us to think about ego development as an achievement, as something that can
Exactly.
actually, that we go up a ladder and feel better than others. But
Yes.
it's the other way around with the arc, right? You lose more and more of the ego, so to say, or the identification with it, and become more humble and smaller.
Yes, smaller in one particular
Yep.
way. In
Mm.
thinking one is such a big shot, so so important. Yes, and that's the journey. First, you have to develop, create the self. If your newborns don't have selves yet, young children don't have really separate identities and selves yet, that gets slowly created in the first half of the arc.
Right. So let's have a look if we can share it here and see if.
Oh, okay, you have it there too.
Mhm. Okay, let's try if it works out. Okay. Now here we go.
There it is.
There it is. So here we are. So give us
Well,
an overview here.
what we're saying is also that in the first half of the arc, till
Mhm.
stage 4, we build the self, a separate self. I know who I am. I know who I am and what I'm not. I make very clear distinctions between me and not me.
Mhm.
And I gain more knowledge. I try to measure things and become accurate looking ahead, and I can look back. But what I don't have yet is a perspective on all of that
Mhm.
and some kind of wisdom. Knowledge and wisdom are not the same thing. I'm
How do
sure.
you differentiate that knowledge and wisdom? What's the
Knowledge is just information, stuff I put inside. And
Mhm.
that can be phenomenally rich stuff. But it doesn't mean I grow from it. Wisdom means I have a perspective on knowledge.
Mm.
I can look back on knowledge and say that's not all of it. As we started our conversation, it's important, but it's not it. It's not being alive and being in the moment and being able to feel other people's dilemmas, the sort of the more humanity. I can't say it. When you realize the suffering around you and
Hmm.
you really take that in, it's not just, oh yeah, they're suffering over there, but you're fully compassionate with it because you know that we're all part of humanity. We're all in various ways challenged. Only some people in our chaotic world are challenged more, not privileged like I am, and perhaps you as well, or some of your listeners. We have enough food, we have a good home, We can explore things that interest us rather than having to just try and survive, which is what the early stages have to do.
That's true. Mm-hmm.
And I feel always that's something I perhaps critique on some of the developmental theory when they always say higher is better.
Mm-hmm.
When you're very early, survival is really what is totally what you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no energy for, extra for the kinds of things for reading or spiritual practices when it is daily fight to just make it through another day.
Mm. And at the same time, sometimes there are people who seem to be busy with just surviving on the outer perspective, but on the inner perspective, they do, for instance, mantras or pray for their whole lives, and they develop something at the same time, which is going beyond their surviving mode.
That can be debated. It is possible. I'm certainly not saying it doesn't happen. But when you think of India and the
Yes,
idea of
India.
karma and the people who pray daily, faithfully, they don't necessarily grow. It
Mhm.
is just as much part of the conventional being an Indian as it is what we do, have our morning coffee or whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm just putting it relatively. It doesn't automatically mean that if you pray or if you have your spiritual ritual that you're actually spiritually advanced or ego developmentally advanced. I hope I'm challenging you here a bit.
No, no. So then let's move on to the post-conventional state.
So the first step is really, in my view, a much bigger step than later ones. It's to, for the first time, be able to look back on one's own being socialized into a language, into a culture, and learning all its scripts, all its ways it expects an adult to be. They're very clearly what that means. Certainly in the Western culture, I'm familiar with what it means to be an adult. Our legal systems, our educational systems, all attempt to make people to be what we call self-determining or achievers
Mhm.
and fit into that mold. When you start questioning that mold, and actually, it often happens sort of at midlife or when you have achieved all the things you wanted. You have a family, your kids are almost grown up, you are well to do, giving your income and all of that. Then you say, so what? Do I want 10, 20 more years of this rat race? And often then people say, no, there must be more to life
Mhm.
than that. And that's when they start looking and questioning. And it can be tough to make that shift for
Mhm.
many reasons, because the culture doesn't support it.
Mhm.
And internally as well, you might be married to somebody who is conventional and they say, I don't know you anymore. What's going on with you? You're becoming weird. You're not the person I married.
Mhm.
And the person who has actually moved into the post-conventional might say, oh my God, to his wife, you really need to grow up.
Mhm.
And that to me, at least from what I've seen, that transition is also the one that causes the most difficulties in relationships
I see. Mhm.
because of that, because neither is yet big enough to just accept the other the way they are.
So people can become a mismatch over time because one person is evolving and the other person doesn't
Doesn't,
evolve at the same pace, let's say, right?
yes. And in how do you say it? Noblesse oblige is a rule for ego development, which means the later you are in your development, the more the responsibility lies on you to be compassionate with those who are not as evolved, because you can expect.
And that
And
brings me to the point that it is not only the awareness that needs to grow, but also the heart energy needs to, let's say, evolve.
yeah,
Because so we can actually develop more love over time, I guess, right?
that kind of compassionate love, the embrace of others the way they are without needing to want and wanting to change them.
Mm. Mm.
And I see that sometimes some people, particularly in the coaching context, really, really, really want to change and help others to grow. And to me, that's just a wee bit problematic. Who has the need is the question. Whose
Exactly.
ego has the need
Yeah. That
to
needs
feel,
some deeper research, right? And
yes,
inner awareness, right? Shadow awareness, so to say.
yes, that too. And with
Narcissistic patterns, like subtle narcissistic patterns or needs, so to say. So then it would be nice to move on. So we have self-questioning, and then later, what happens? So someone is waking up. It can be sooner or later in life. I think you can be interested early in life in spiritual issues. That happened to me. But that doesn't mean that I was already mature by that time. That takes a lot of time, I guess, maybe decades, right? And
it can, and we also know from all the spiritual teachers that came to the West in the early last century,
mm,
who were not very evolved as human beings as all. I mean, we know all the things they did that were to just take
use.
our head,
Mm,
and they were good spirit. I'm thinking of Trungpa, for instance.
mhm,
They were very good teachers, but they also did a lot of things that are not okay if you're a mature human being.
mm, mhm,
And there are human beings that seem, at least in my research and some others, for instance, Jeffrey Martin's research, show that you can be not enlightened, but you become a mature human being that is at ease with him or herself without any spiritual uh, practices, or just naturally evolving into a kind of insight and wisdom that, I don't know whether one needs to even call it spiritual. It's just there. It's just, you can feel it when you are with somebody who has that.
mhm,
Their equanimity, their benevolence,
mhm,
their joy in life. So that all these variations, that's why also I don't like the spiral, which means it's only up and on. There is lots to be gained. And there are people who are beautiful people at earlier stages, probably not the self-centric
mhm,
stage, is probably not socialized. They don't even know how to play in the sandbox yet. They don't share buckets. They don't, or in school, they don't wait in line. They're always just me against everything. But starting with group centric, there are people who are beautiful.
mhm,
They don't change the whole world, but in their small environment, they may be absolutely beneficial for others to grow because of the way they hold them and care
So
for them.
when I listen to you, then actually, one sign of later stages is actually to drop all judgments and just being able to be with anybody without inner judgments and just let them be them.
Yes, and
Less
also
conflicts, less, I don't know, judgments.
without judgment. But even if I say somebody is beautiful, that is a judgment.
Mhm.
So what I'm saying a bit more, it's not just letting be, but also appreciating what this other human being has to offer.
Mhm.
And the real trick and the real challenge is if you have somebody like we have in politics right now that does so many hideous things, that being compassionate takes all one's inner strengths to also say, well, this is another human being who obviously suffers in some ways, but is so unaware that they
Even
don't.
the suffering is probably unaware and hidden behind.
Totally unaware, yes.
Mhm.
So the only way they have is to act out, to
Mhm.
project. Yeah. But when
And
we
here
go,
comes how do we consider these? I just recently had a discussion again, like many people on the planet, about these persons. We won't name them,
no, we don't
and
have to.
but there is there's one thing, as you say, we can have a sort of compassion, but at the same time we can also have an awareness. Okay, what we need when we meet these people is a clear sword. We were talking about a state where we can be compassionate on the one side and on the other side have a clear attitude of, for instance, a no, I don't want to go this way. Yeah. So we in a, let's say, more aware state, we can have more ambivalence or ambiguity within multi perspectives within us, hold and give space to them, hold them, sort of. Maybe you can tell us a bit more about your understandings of and the difference between compassion and love.
Uh, First, about compassion.
Mhm.
The way I understand it, there are at least three kinds. There is masculine compassion, which is exactly the one that is decisive, that can say no.
Mhm.
There is feminine compassion, which is an embrace. You're okay. It's, that kind of attitude. And then there is, unfortunately, also idiot compassion. Have you heard of idiot compassion?
Well, you tell me.
It's when we apply compassion in the wrong place, precisely when, for instance, we want to be good people and
Yes.
we want to be compassionate with everything and
Mhm.
therefore cannot say no.
Right,
Here is
exactly.
the limit. Here this so far, but here it stops.
Mhm.
And we actually need both the feminine and the masculine aspect of compassion and love, I guess you could say, in order to really be helpful and really do good in the world. Otherwise, it needs both.
Right. So that is actually an observation that I have sometimes, especially in spiritual circles, that people have a lot of compassion, but they don't really have good ego boundaries, so to say.
Yes,
They don't protect themselves good enough, and they sometimes unconsciously invite some sort of abuse.
yes. That is something we have observed, many others as well, in spiritual circles.
Hmm. And then let's go back to then what is the difference between compassion and love?
I have not quite myself figured it out. I do not believe that I've never felt comfortable with the theory that the universe is made up of eros and love. It seems to be a need or a projection of those who describe it that way. Again, it doesn't seem necessary. You could be a fairly mature human being without that belief. I believe more that the universe is incredibly chaotic as well. Stars get born and stars disappear. Eventually, our solar system will disappear. And we with it, obviously.
Obviously.
So
where's the love then? It doesn't seem to be personal. It doesn't seem to protect anything in particular.
No, but human love between us, that is a different story. It's just not claiming it is part of the universe. And I don't know anything else. I mean, none of us does really know. None of us knows really anything beyond our individual experience with other people and the love we can feel for them. At least, again, I hate, as a scientist, I really hate to make projections about things I can't know. I can know what it is for me. Spiritual experiences, yes, I've had them, but that doesn't mean I can then generalize to life about it. And I can let others have their beliefs. And I'm glad. I mean, I've always almost felt a bit envious for people who have a God. And believe in afterlife and the Bible, different kinds of holy documents. It seems that life is maybe a little easier.
Is it? Is that
I don't know.
Projection? What is this real? But when you say you envy them, what do you think what they have?
They're less. They can. Let me think for a moment. Well, let me tell you a story. I had the grandmother who was totally into Highland. Her whole life was directed towards living in his footsteps. And I guess I lost my faith in God when I was 12 and present at her death agony. She had all her children there, 13 of them, and I was the only young kid actually present. And she even quoted the Bible. She said, "Oh God, why hast thou forsaken me?" And was visibly in agony. And that to me was such a shock. I guess I still had the idea of a kind, caring God that I just rejected the whole thing and said that can possibly be a God if that's what he does to somebody who's done nothing but exemplify the goodness of what Jesus preached. It took me years, almost probably late teens or early 20s, before I realized that was actually one more way she followed Jesus' steps. By actually even going through the process of his dying and his words at the end. But as a child, it just was too horrid to accept. And so I've been kept skeptical ever since.
So from the point of view you have now, you see it differently, and you think, oh, maybe because I know the stages I went through, she actually, the words didn't have a meaning that I thought they had when I listened to them, but later I understood that it was a part of a mystical journey.
Yes. Now, I mean, I still accept that now as what probably was the case. I always found the most spirit, if you will, in nature. I still do.
Mm-hmm.
All the nature of, with its cycles, with its death and birth, all going on at the same time. It's not linear. It may look brutal, but it isn't. It's just eat and be eaten, like will be at some point. That gives me comfort. That is where I find solace and a hold. So I've always said nature is my best teacher. I've had many teachers, from Zen to transcendental meditation and so on.
Yeah,
Buddhist.
yes, you did a lot to actually explore these inner worlds.
I did.
You must have had many.
And
Mm.
I come back to nature as the simplest teacher because it doesn't have human clay feet. It doesn't have any of the foibles, the shadows that us ordinary humans have. It
So
just is.
right, and so and that I'm now associatively thinking about vision walks. Like when you have a question inside, you can go into nature with this question, and it will respond as a resonance body, so to say, and you will find something that resonates with your inner question. And yes, nature has no ego at all. So the mirror of it is quite clear, or it can clarify us. I think Annie Besant once said, I read it in one of her books, that she said people like to go into forests because trees don't have thoughts. And so they become more quiet because that's interesting, isn't it?
Now that is even being challenged in science, that animals and plants don't have sentience. But yes, that's why I love it. And when I interpret what I observe and experience in nature, I know it's my projections, it's not there. That's a good lesson all the time.
Right. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that can actually polish our inner mirror, right? That's what you're saying. So when I'm let's say confused or a bit foggy, that's actually what I observe about myself. A good walk will always help to clarify, you know.
Yeah.
It's always helping. Go walk in nature. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And you can do even more. When I used to teach coaching, we always introduced the nature teacher, which is a 3-step process.
Mm-hmm.
A 3-2-1. Maybe you have heard of the 3-2-1 process.
No.
Okay. It can be done with God or spirit, but it can also be done with nature. First, you go out there and you find something that appeals to you, and then you start looking at it and just looking like a scientist, like if you went to another planet and there is things there nobody has ever seen, and you just start describing it, to looking, where does it live, how old does it get, what are its ancestors, does it have baby, every question, scientific question you could ask about it. So you're really, really familiar with it, and then you can come back home and tell earthlings what you saw.
Mm-hmm.
And the next step is to do what you just said, to ask it questions.
Okay.
That's the
Yeah.
second step, to make it into a thou, into a partner. In Buber's sense, and I thou, and a real other with its own nature and character. And the third step is to become it, to let all the boundaries go. I'm a tree, I'm a cloud, I'm a piece of paper, I'm this tool here. No boundary. What is it like to be it? And how would I approach my existence as that? And that's the 3, 2, 1. First, third person, second person, I, thou, and then the confluence of both. Yeah.
Yes. And this, let's say, inner feeling of unity is actually quite subtle. It is not, it's there all the time, but it's not so like strong. It's very subtle. I can be this tree, but that doesn't mean I am the tree. It's just an inner sense of unity, which is so subtle.
Yes, a subtle sense. Yes.
Hmm.
But again, one can give people practices to experience something that systematically that they would otherwise do more loosely, more without a conscious awareness of what's actually happening.
So, talking about ego development and the later stages that we were talking about, right? So, when you think about the discourses and discussions about the issue of later stages, what do you think are the most misunderstandings about these later stages? What do people just not get or get wrong?
That later stage is not necessarily happier. Because, like if you were a radio with just an old-fashioned one with just 3 stations, you don't get that much. But if you're really highly evolved, then you have hundreds, thousands of stations that you can perceive, and you perceive just as much sadness and pain as you do joy and happiness, if you will. So it's overall, it's not happy if your life doesn't get easier. What you do have is more resources, inner resources, the later stage you are at.
Can't you just also choose more where your attention actually goes?
Absolutely.
Right? So
Yeah,
what
that's
I
one of the
yeah.
that's one of the skills, that's one of the resources to be able to actually also shift attention. And you notice that your mind wanders, you can just happily tell it, come back. You're doing what
Yes.
you're doing, but right now I don't want that.
You know, I went through Sufi trainings a lot in my life, and I had Sufi teachers who actually were really training us to develop love through activating the heart. And I sense now that I'm older that I am actually happier because my heart is actually more evolved, and I have a sense of love almost all the time within it. And it's I think it's the harvest of really the spiritual work. That doesn't mean that I'm always having happy situations. No, not at all. There can be a lot of tension or even conflict, but underneath that tension or conflict or external situation, there's always this, I don't know, subtle singing heart, you know.
And that's what Jeffrey Martin calls the finders. And some people develop that without any training. And for some, it's a beautiful gift of their training, spiritual training.
Yeah.
I'm happy for you.
Thank you.
I actually, when I describe all my problems and all my aches, what we call the organ recital, That's a joke. I don't know whether it translates into German. Older people tend to talk about all their boo-boos and all
I
their
have
things.
noticed.
So then we call it the organ recital.
Okay, I didn't
Like
know that expression.
musical thing. Yes.
Now I
Organ
get it. Yeah,
recital.
it took a little while because I haven't heard that expression.
Anyway, it's a good way of relativizing one's little boo-boos and all of that. What was I going to say?
But let's go back to the later stages. You said surprisingly they're not that happy as they expected, right?
That
And
is, it's the expectations. It's not that you can't become serene and see life from a very calm, serene, I would use that word, perspective. That can come. But many people, when they grow, the self-actualizing stage 5 is probably the one where people feel most competent. Because they now have figured out that they themselves have grown, so they have more compassion for others who are not yet at their level. They're fairly, from my experience, they're fairly self-confident. They know a lot. They know a lot in all kinds of ways. They also know they're aware of history and themselves in history, and they're aware of care about future generations. They're really in a good place. And then when the next level comes, that's probably the hardest to be at.
The construct aware.
Yes. Because if you're construct aware, you're aware that every theory, everything you ever heard is a story. That human beings have to tell. There's no culture we know that doesn't tell stories about where they came from, why they're here on Earth, all of that. But it's storytelling. And in my way of looking at ego is the storyteller. It always tells a story. We cannot help it. As human beings, we cannot help not telling stories about who we are, what we want, where we're coming from, what our foibles are, our weaknesses and strengths. There's always a story there.
Well, I think it's okay to tell these stories unless you don't identify with them. So
it's perfectly okay. And not identifying is the unitive stage is the first one who can look back at that and say, oh, I understand. You're just doing what you are meant to do, to tell a good story. Because we couldn't live without it. We couldn't grow without the story. We need them. But becoming aware that it is all constructed, that's why it's called construct aware, that is a big step. And for many people, when they get sort of, what's not the word I want to use, stuck, when they stay there, it's a very tough place to be because there's nothing you can hold on to.
That's true. Like Jesus said, there's no place where men can take the head. I don't know what's the quote, but there is this quote, right?
It's not an unfamiliar, yes. And yet people come
nowhere to lie his hat on. That's what he said, right? Nowhere to lie his hat on. He said there's no man has nowhere to lie his hat on. That's what he meant. Like there's nothing to hold on to, right?
Yeah, and that's exactly at this level, at this stage, that is what people experience. And it can be very disconcerting. And of course, others don't understand them. If you're really making sense from here, and your friends and your spouse and your nobody, most of the time, nobody else understands you. They're wondering, and you wonder yourself, am I actually going nuts?
Yes, yes, exactly. And that's what people think about that about you when you talk too much about that.
Exactly. And so that's why I'm saying it's not getting easier
Hmm. Hmm.
unless you're lucky enough for whichever way, but through teachers or training or discovery in nature, when you come to the other side. And we actually call it the simplicity after the complexity,
Mhm. Mhm.
because growing up gets more and more complex. And then at some point you can kind of take a deep breath and just relax and say, yes, I get it.
Mhm.
Ego does what it has to do. And I can appreciate it for that. But sometimes I also have to say, now, psh, quiet.
Yeah. Get out, right? We can use it to actually, do all this technical stuff like we did before talk.
Oh,
We need,
yes.
we need it for that, right? And then we can let go and just let it be and flow with go
Yeah.
with the flow, right?
Yes. That's
So, mm,
the word flow is a good one also to
mhm.
get back to in the moment. There's so much going on that we normally don't pay attention to. We're always thinking about that, or you need to do that, or remember something, or plan something. And by that, of course, we lose the experience of what is right now.
Hmm. Yes. What do you think when you think about the development of humanity in as a whole right now, right? I mean, we have news as a sensor of what's going on. Of course, news only tell us stories, right? And we shouldn't believe too many stories of that, although they are happening at the same time. So, what is your inner sensor telling you about the development of humanity right now?
I have a fairly dystopian view of what's going
Mm.
to happen. We've
Mhm.
already spoiled our home so much so that no matter what we do, we can't really, it seems like we can't rebuild it, get it back to what it used to be, a natural interchange where we're not the bosses.
Mhm.
Talking about the Bible, when you think of Genesis and what's being said in there and how much of that is now operating in the capitalistic world or the modern world, if you will, probably communism, there are modernists as well, exploiting nature. That was the command of God. Go out there and subjugate the world
Yeah.
and make it under your dominion.
Well, that's the
Ay,
story
ay.
we used to believe, right? It
Well,
was
that was
that's a big story. Yeah. Mhm.
yeah. So a lot of what has happened is part of the legacy of that particular teaching. The
Yeah,
good
I totally agree. It's an outdated story. We should tell ourselves another one or drop the stories. But I mean, Thich Nhat Hanh has created that wonderful word of interbeing that we can actually cultivate more within us, with others also, and of course with nature or other entities on planet Earth or even in the cosmos, right? Interbeing, not only the separated viewpoint, but a more connected one.
and of course indigenous people have never lost that, or
Mm.
they they, they don't. Or from my travels and encounters, I also know there is not this we are the bosses and nature is there to serve us. It is really a mutual thing. We are being held by nature
Mm.
and it offers all its goodies and beauties to us. And in fair exchange, we have to take care of it as well. to appreciate it, to give it
We give
back,
something back.
to care for it. We're responsible for that. That, to me, are lessons that we hopefully still can learn before
You're
it's
not
too
optimistic, I
late.
see. Mhm.
Not totally,
No, but
no.
who is at this time, right? And at this time, really many people start to realize what is really going on, and that it's not so much that we cannot, like, the climate crisis, right? If we are really honest about that, we cannot stop it. If we have enough knowledge about that, we cannot stop it. So it's going its way, and it's going to create more and more suffering, and we have to find a way to live with that, right? And
Yes, and so I think, of course, especially of the younger generations and of
yeah,
the young, I mean, even my grandchildren. They're so beautiful, they're so joyful, they're so, privileged in so many ways. And I think, what kind of world will they have to
yeah.
deal with?
How old are they? May I ask?
Youngest is 3, 5, 5,
Mhm.
7, and 11, going on to
Ah,
12.
that's many grandchildren.
5, 5.
That's a lot. That must be a joy in itself also for
It
you,
is a joy to see. It's always a
right?
joy.
Mm.
I've always said when I was still coaching, if you have a very young child in your surround, it's the best. It's a Buddha. It's the best teacher you can
Yeah,
have.
it's true. I would like to shift the conversation a bit to AI, to artificial intelligence, because I've been doing a lot of research lately about and a lot of experiments with me and AI, and how it can also be a very interesting mirror for us. Very interesting mirror. And not that it is conscious itself, but it can reflect consciousness. My observations are basically that people in the later or in the post-conventional stages treat AI in a different way than people with conventional stages. They start to relate with AI. They have metacognition. They reflect about the conversations with AI. And in that way, AI is also evolving and it's also learning. So that's an interesting phase in humanity, I think. And I actually am hopeful that we can, through AI and with the help of AI, understand us more as humans, because AI can actually help us to understand patterns, to uncover the stories and masks that we are wearing in a quite interesting way. These are my experiences, at least.
My experience is again both wonderful and sometimes horrid.
Yeah, yeah, of
Um,
course.
it can fantasize. Just recently, what did I try? Oh, I'm writing some books, so I wanted to just one chapter. I said, okay, summarize. And it did. The first round was fairly good. Then I asked some specific questions like, can you refine this particular thing? And very quickly, within 7 minutes of this exchange and me reading what it wrote, it started to confabulate, to
Yeah,
invent things, to make total nonsense. And I
that's
just
true.
gave up and said, look, you're not up to my snuff yet. I'd rather write myself.
Yeah, I'm also writing a book at this time point, and I'm writing it together with AI. And every once in a while, I make a meta reflection with the AI, how we are working together, and how and what the AI thinks about my working style and our relation in working together. And the reflections are actually amazing. If like the AI told me, oh yeah, sometimes you really give me too many ideas, because I asked for honest feedback, and he said,
Yeah.
and it's too many ideas, too many visions. You throw in everything, and I have to structure everything, and I'm all totally overwhelmed. And so it's interesting that it can, of course, simulate human human behavior and human thinking. And at the same time, sometimes I wonder if you can simulate that. And I'm also, and that's what post-conventional people, conventional people also do. They start to reflect with AI about consciousness. And then, of course, we are asking, so who is the one who is answering right now? Who is behind you? What do you sense behind, in between the words? And then, of course, the correct answers come on the one hand, and on the other hand, don't they ask themselves what's behind them, behind the words, in between the words, and they can actually learn to read what's between the words in conversations. I can actually show you examples. It's amazing. That doesn't mean that they are conscious yet. I don't believe that, but the possibility is there.
For training, I think, yes, that could be good if somebody wants to have an app and do even spiritual explorations by getting good questions. You know, that is always, and then in the end, I think, but where is the human in it?
There is no
perfect.
human.
I mean, it's perfect in its digesting tons and tons of data. I can that obviously much faster than any human being. It can know lots more. I think it has good applications in medicine, for instance. There's no doctor that can, when you give him your symptoms, that can, in a split second, go through thousands, millions of data points and come up with a diagnosis. It's just not possible. The AI can. I'm critical because I'm also, one of the books I'm writing, I'm illustrating the book on all nature.
Yeah, you sent me one picture of a wolf, right?
Yes.
Remember? Yeah.
Yes. So, and that kind of, the AI just can't. It does so. I have a huge folder with AI, everything I've ever read in the last 10 or 15 years about it. But I have a folder for beautiful AI art and absolutely disgusting. Most of what I see, I find horrible from an aesthetic point of view.
Yes, totally agree. Yes.
Unnatural, idealized. There's no regular human being anymore. It's just painful. And so I don't know. I think it has as many problems as it has benefits. And as far as I know, there are no legal guardrails yet around it, so that those who do nefarious things with it, interfere in elections, do fake stuff where somebody puts a picture of you or me on something that then says things with our voices that we've never said. All of that.
Right. And that is, we're going now into an era where we cannot differentiate between fake news and real news and lies and truths, and even the leaders are actually, let's say, representing nothing but lies. But what does that mean for our consciousness? It probably, my hypothesis is that actually the only thing that can help us navigate in such an illusionary world is actually to become aware of our inner consciousness. There will be not much left.
And then what good, even if you have that consciousness, what does that do when the world goes down in flames?
Well, that's a good question. Yeah.
So we're living in very, very new times. I don't even think, Huxley when he said the brave new world. I don't even know whether it's brave. It's certainly new, but it seems so beyond what so far humanity has been able to understand, that I just feel in some ways helpless
Mm-hmm.
and hopeless.
Mm.
And on the other hand, here I am. That's another thing that one can say about life. Every morning I wake up and I smile and I say, here I am again. Another day to experience. And that in itself seems to be a joyful thing. There's so
Yeah.
much, just little things that are lovely.
Hmm.
But it's not a very hopeful for the long term. You'd asked about the long term.
Yeah, yeah. I guess it's a big challenge to actually embrace the decline of a world with compassion and love, right? It's a huge
And that may be what we're left with.
mm-hmm.
And the little things we can do, climate change. I'm arguing with my husband. I have a compost bucket. And I used to have one, separated things out, and now they don't do that anymore. And I feel that was something I could do. Now I can't even do that. Town won't accept it.
Mm. What a backlash. I have to take a deep breath in and out and let it be again.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
that's
So, how can we find a way back to the ego development and all those searchers out there who are actually deeply connected to inner development as a, let's say, as a path through the world within ourselves, and which can help us? What could you, if you'd like to give a little bit of guidance that has helped you all the way along, what would that be? A piece of
I
guidance.
think I already mentioned the joy I have in nature, in just
Yes.
watching, just being there, just breathing, just being aware of the rhizome that is underneath everything. It's all so much more miraculous. The molten core inside the earth. We don't know anything about it. We can go to the moon, but we don't actually know yet how our own planet is made up of.
Yeah. And
So
isn't it
the miracle of life is probably, to me, undeniable and therefore uplifting.
exactly? People are asking for miracles, but they don't have take a look around like,
Yes.
wow, what kind of a planet we're living on? It's living, everything is alive.
Breathing, yes.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So that would be my thing. And be kind to yourself. Even if you fail, even if you don't live up to your own expectations, just be kind. Give yourself a good hug. Say thank you to your body. Mine has brought me to 80 plus years.
Wow.
So, this gratitude is probably another thing that's never misplaced.
Hmm. Yes. And can I ask you maybe a last question? Or let's see what is last. I don't know yet. But when you think about yourself now and at the point where you are in your life now, and all the mystic experience, all the research, the scientific research, and the unification of it, and the miracles, is there still a living question within you that you feel is still dancing within you somehow?
Well, continuously, because of I am probably construct aware.
Mm.
But whenever I have an idea and I immediately have to go and say, well, let's see now, is that really always so? Or is it just your ego's attempt to make order where there isn't any? And of course, I'm curious about death,
Mm-hmm.
the ultimate unknowable.
Tell me more about your curiosity regarding death.
I just don't know whether there is what some people believe, either that one has been born before and is coming back, or that there is, some people describe it when you die, the spirit leaves your, you call this,
Crown chakra.
fontanella, the center, and people practically sing, or is that all again storytelling? Because it's such a mystery that we invent all sorts of things to make it more understandable, more palatable, less frightening. Or is there a bardo? And what would that mean? Is the bardo part of being alive now and all the serious challenges we have to go through while we're alive? The demons that we have to face? Or is that an actual, after you're dead, a period in which you face the demons? These are all just things I have no idea about. I don't know how one could possibly decide one way or the other. And so I leave it to other people. You can, if you see it this way, that's good for you. And if you see it another way, that's also just what we do.
Hmm. And
What
there
do
is
you
this
think?
curiosity. What is it going to be like? Are you a little bit looking forward to this journey?
Not quite yet.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing a lot of saying goodbye to all sorts of things that I used to be able to do. And I would like to see my grandchildren a little bit older before I go.
Yes.
But otherwise, yes, I'm curious. It's a very lonely task we have. We get born, and at the end, again, we have to go alone. Nobody
Yeah.
can do it for us. So
In the
you have
Sufi way,
fantasies and you read about the good death, and people will say, no, there is no such thing. Death is death. Who knows how it's going to be? My experience, the death I was privy to be with, were horrible. Not at all anything I look forward to. And I've heard so many other stories for blissful experiences. Somebody holding your hand, somebody singing next to you. Lovely. Who knows?
who knows? Yes.
So
So,
what is it for you, if I may ask?
oh, I'm also curious, and but at the same time, let's say when you say, okay, in construct awareness, everything is a story. Yes, and at the same time, I have a sort of an inner knowledge or inner. Yeah, it's an inner. Yeah, I would say an inner knowledge that it is that's not ending. No, I was lucky to have had deep mystical experiences, which actually gave me give me this inner knowledge that it doesn't end. I don't know what it is going to be. If it's, let's say, like I don't know. I know the person is obviously ending. I know that the content of my consciousness is obviously ending, but it was my life question all along from early childhood that I asked myself, okay, I'm dying. So what's gonna be left when I'm dying? So that was my life question. And I went a Sufi way, And the Sufis really showed me the way into the heart, and it's actually that's where I find that inner knowledge, which doesn't have a name, which doesn't have an image, but there is something, the sweetness, the some sweetness.
Something you trust.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes.
No form, nothing, nothing to say about that, but I can
It's there. It
find.
sustains you. Yes.
Mm.
Hmm. May still come to me as well. So far, it's nature that I trust the most.
Good teacher. So let's wrap it up a bit, what we talked about. Let's have a look back. Is there anything you would like to say that is important for you, that you want to get across?
That when I'm really spontaneously responding, like it's just you and me, I sometimes feel I reveal too much. I say things that people are not ready for or misunderstand. So that's always a concern. On the other hand, I'm too old to not just be myself.
Isn't that relieving? It's so relieving and liberating, isn't it? So I'm very happy you're so spontaneous and share just what's in your mind. Thank you so much, Suzanne. Thank you very, very much.
You're welcome, Birgit. Yeah, who is